To Tyson Slocum. He is director of the energy program at Public Citizen. That's an advocacy group here in Washington, D.C. Are these temperatures normal for India? I mean, how much of this do you think is what we're seeing in terms of climate change?
These temperatures are definitely not normal. India does have a lot of heat. Their highest recorded temperature actually was in 1956. So we haven't seen records broken, but there's no question that there is likely a connection between the kind of punishing heat that we're seeing in India and effects of climate change. Of course, you can't attribute one single event to something like climate change, but there's no question that the science tells us that climate change is going to create more extreme weather patterns, and that's going to include droughts. It's going to make drier periods drier. It's going to make wetter periods wetter. And so that's the general trend that we're seeing around the world.
Let me ask you about El Nino, because a lot of people are saying we're going to have a monster El Nino this year as well. Talk to us a little bit about that, and that also can have devastating impacts as well, correct?
Right. So El Nino refers to the phenomenon of a warming parts of the Pacific Ocean, which in turn influences the jet stream and other air weather patterns. And so what you see is a cycling of air that moves storm systems across North America, parts of the United States. And so what it typically does is lead to hotter and drier areas in the northern part of the United States and wetter periods in the southern part of the United States. So again, you can't necessarily attribute the storms that have been raging through Texas directly to the El Nino phenomenon, but it is likely that situations like El Nino that are caused by rising temperatures due to climate change does play a factor in influencing longer-term climatic trends.
And I was just reading an article where scientists are now saying that what you're likely to see with El Niños because of climate change is that they're going to be more intense as they come along, that this is a cycle that we've seen for a long period of time, but the intensity is going to grow with each one, and I guess this year would be another example of that.
That's correct. And so what some scientists are worried about is that in the next several weeks, what's going on in Texas might be happening in California. Remember, before the devastating floods this past weekend in Texas, there was a 5-year drought in this region. California obviously is going through a terrible drought. There's significant water shortages. It looks like it's because of aspects of El Nino and climate change, you create this kind of feast or famine situation where, again, you've got more intense weather patterns. The drier periods are drier for a more prolonged period of time, and a wetter period is wetter for a longer period of time.
So if you factor all this in, as you look into your crystal ball, what are we looking at in this next year or so, do you think?
Well, I mean, the United Nations has been very clear that the effects of climate change are going to continue to intensify as we see global temperatures inch up over the months and years, as we see more and more ice, particularly in the northern part of the planet, recede. That's going to affect ocean temperatures, ocean currents, air temperatures. So unless the world can come to some sort of agreement to try and slow this process down, I think that more intense natural disasters is going to be the new normal.
Are you encouraged, though, by the fact that China and the United States are both pledging that they're going to work together on this issue? I mean, you have two superpowers like that talking about it. That puts it front and center, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question that we've seen a heightened level of cooperation between the largest carbon emitters, including China and the United States. And that's really going to be central to getting some sort of global deal. In the past, we've had negotiations occur through the United Nations, and those discussions haven't really progressed very far. What we really need to do is to have the largest economies, the largest emitters, sit down, get an agreement on how they're going to decarbonize their economies going forward, and then figure out ways to funnel funding for adaptation to other countries that are dealing with the effects of climate change today.